We feel like the governors don't appreciate the work that the Senate does. If you hear some of the pronouncements from your colleagues directed at members of this House, it is as if they don't understand the work that we do. We have fought, and on principle, we have agreed with the National Assembly on 3 things. That number one, counties will never receive less than what they received in the previous or preceding financial year. Number two, that if there is a shortfall in revenue, the person or the entity to bear that is the national government. And thirdly, that Governor, year on year, Senate has always to demonstrate, the national government has always to demonstrate increase in the resources that the county governments receive. So whereas you're telling us that the COG is not happy with the 387, I would be more happy, Governor, if you were saying that we saved you 7 billion Kenya shillings that was going to be removed from the allocation to county governments. Because as you know, you are a Senate. A mediation process does not get you entirely what you wanted. And I was getting a bit concerned because your colleagues were threatening to shut down counties, including some from my own political party, and I didn't understand why they were crying like that instead of allowing the Senate to conclude that process. So in terms of fighting for counties, I think this Senate has done very well, but we don't see reciprocity in terms of just basic respect from members, not you personally, but from some of the members of the COG. And I know you had ambitions to be chair of COG. I don't know how the campaigns went, but you need to be able to pass a message to your colleagues that some of the pronouncements really demoralize the Senate in our work.
You see, if we debate this matter, we can take the entire day because they are pertinent and there are issues that are of great concern. But we've got a brief before us today that we must do justice to. But just linking the brief before us to this conversation so that we go back to the numbers, is that these reports that we've directed the Auditor General to do a deep analysis on is part of the financing mechanisms for Nairobi City County. For the financial year ended 30th June 2023, you had reported a collection of 10.5 billion. 10.5 billion Kenya shillings as per the report of the receiver of revenue. Now 10.5 billion means that on average you're collecting 29 million per day. 29 million per day. Every single hour you're collecting 1.2 million. So the 1 hour that we have spent here, Nairobi has collected about 1.2 million and about 20,000 per minute. Of course, there are many Kenyans who believe that these numbers with automation, with greater efficiencies, that Nairobi should collect much more than the 10.5 billion that is here. You are complaining about the division of revenue, which we all share, that the 387 billion is not sufficient to support even the basic operations of counties when you think about the non-discretionary expenditure that has been loaded to county governments. I think it would not be fair for us to proceed without querying your plans and strategies for financing of Nairobi City County. Because this 10.5 billion plus your share of the 387 billion is not going to transform Nairobi into the modern metropolis that it ought to be. So outside whatever you're collecting from Gikomba, and outside whatever the national government gives county governments thinking that it's a favor, and yet it's a constitutional right, what are the other options for financing of Nairobi City County that you have in place right now? I know you've told us about green bonds, but those are futuristic. What is it that you're doing over and above the 10.5 billion and whatever it is the Senate is going to allocate to Nairobi?
Thank you, Chair. Kindly allow me just 1 minute to, because I'm very passionate about devolution. We've been together in this house, and even previously when I was in the lower house, we were together in a committee which I chaired, and I must say I am continuously astounded by your growing wisdom, and how you manage these issues. You're doing very well, which is true, because for the first 5 years I chaired. and I think you learned, and you're very good.
Order, Governor.
It's a compliment.
It is a general rule that when a governor praises a senator, then there's a problem.
No.
So I might want to ask you to withdraw your flowery comment.
I will withdraw the praise. Chair, on DORA, if you look at 217B and PFM, I think 191.3A, a very dangerous precedent has been set, where CARA is being used to amend DORA. If you look at that, the memorandum that came, it is challengeable. And 219 says specifically that when there's a shortfall, it must be borne by the national government. So we are grateful, and I will talk to my colleagues, because it is not right to disparage the Senate in its efforts. I believe the Senate has done a great job in pushing for us. Of course, in this mediation, maybe the approach could have been different, but that is crying over spilt milk. Because if the 30 days lapsed without an agreement, then we would go back to 400 billion. It was not for us to have an agreement. It was for those pushing an amendment to have an agreement. We would have stuck at 400. But we understand the macroeconomic issues, and I believe we'll grow. The point you've raised is very important, as I now move to what you've asked. Devolution, and I will also table to you a publication I did in 2010 with the International Commission of Jurists on the fiscal and operational framework for fiscal decentralization. The operational and legal framework for it. There are 4 principles, but we only focus on one as counties, and sometimes even as Senate. The first one, of course, devolution is based on the principle of subsidiarity. That a service is best offered at the lowest level compatible with the benefit of that service. The first thing you look at is what are the constitutional responsibilities of each level. So that is the expenditure responsibility. That is in the 4th schedule, and that is costing of functions. The second principle you then look at is then what are the revenue raising measures. That is chapter 12 of the Constitution. That we cannot deal with income tax and such consumption taxes as a lower level. We deal with business and property rates, business fees, etc. So we're limited. Now the extent of the potential, and there are many studies that have been done, including on Nairobi, on how much we can raise vis-a-vis our expenditure, then leads you to the third principle, which is the intergovernmental fiscal transfers, which is the equitable share. Unfortunately, we've always fought. Remember, we took almost 3 months here about, you remember the formula, and members were jailed, others were put in vehicles, others kidnapped themselves allegedly, I don't know. But we focus on dividing the cake and not growing it. So the focus is on a small pie, which is never enough. We said no county should lose. But lose what? If you look at the percentage that is going to counties vis-a-vis the national level, it's like counties have been left with a small pie to fight over, which should not be the case. That should be the third. The difference between 1 and 2 is what determines 3. And then finally, what you've mentioned, like with the bond, subnational borrowing, which is limited. I would want to interest this committee to look at amendments to PFM. The limitation on how much a county can borrow or raise through financial instruments, like what Laikipia did, cannot work for municipalities or urban areas like Nairobi. And I'll give you an example. I know every year the minimum we should get is 20 billion from the equitable share. Even if I don't raise another shilling, there's 20 billion. We have continued to increase our revenue. This last year we did the historical high of 12.8 billion. A county should be able to discount the present value of that amount for the next 10-15 years to get close to 400 billion. If you want to do serious infrastructural interventions in this city to make it the world-class capital, it should be. Because we will talk about flooding, about drainage, about BRT, about mass transit. Unless you get 200, 300 billion at a go, then the governor is a glorified cashier, paying salaries, and collecting garbage, which is not even efficient, if you do it in that way. And so I would want to invite the Senate, and even through our committee in COG of Budget and Finance, to actually have a critical analysis of subnational financing, because it would not work the way we're going. We have put in place certain measures, which I'm very happy to report on today. And these measures have led us to raising the highest amount of revenue in the history of devolution at 12.8. which is the current report that is being looked at. We've used the same even for our water company. Senator Osoti's committee will be looking into that, because we made them go beyond the ceiling they had of 8 billion, and there is 10.5 billion Nairobi Water, which is more than many counties raise. Actually, possibly 10 to 13 counties combined, you know, in terms of collections, reducing non-revenue water. How we've done that, if you allow me to go into the specific examples.
Governor, I appreciate that, and actually my query was over and above the 12 billions, the 10.5 billions.
Yeah.
From Onkara, you expect to get how much?
Around 20 billion. Around 20. Now that it's been reviewed.
We are all in consensus that you cannot develop and run Nairobi with 20 billion plus 12 billion plus another 10 billion. It is insufficient. And of course,
which are the 10 billion?
The one from Nairobi Water?
Oh no, yeah, that is for...
Yes, and that's ring fence for
water.
In fact, even that 10 billion
is not enough.
Is not sufficient to provide sanitation and water services to Nairobi.
Yeah.
And really the question is, what is the thinking? Because the Urban Areas and Cities Act requires that there should be specific financing for cities. But it does not come through DORA. You have to go and negotiate a deal before Treasury. I don't know who you've been talking to acquire the additional 4 billion. Why can't we institutionalize that conversation so that it is not a begging mission by the governor of Nairobi to the national government? How can we help you to institutionalize it and to ring-fence it? Because the money you have is not enough.
Chair and Governor, you can take this together. There's something Senator Cherargei said about your friendships. At least I know that one of your friends, my party leader, has taken a position on division of revenue.
Yes.
All those things you are saying, when you discuss with your party leader, what does he say about your views? Because at least mine is clear on how much money should come to the counties. I just want to know, what does he say about some of the things you're saying? And number two, we have had a conversation in this city about the money that is owed by national government institutions through unpaid rates to the Nairobi City County. Again, I want to understand, when you have those conversations with your party leader, who's the head of state, what is his position on these things? Or should we wait until your other friend becomes the head of state so that these things can be done?
I thought you were keen on institutionalizing the conversations rather than basing it on friendship.
It's about to be head of the African states.
On a more substantive issue, Governor has alluded to that in the history of devolution, I don't know whether within Nairobi City County or across the country, he has collected at 12.8 billion.
Yes.
In comparison to what? Because, you know, when he says what is the target and the revenue potential, I don't know whether Dahir, you can tell us what is the revenue potential, or Salat, who is here, the revenue potential of Nairobi City County, because what governor is collecting of 12.8 billion is that the auditor does not have the view of the system in itself. And maybe governor can be gracious as he is today and smiley today, is that he should tell us how much under Nairobi Metropolitan Services, and he cannot run away from this because he was the area senator, and then how much were they collecting comparison to 12.8 billion that we are talking about? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, and I think, Governor, it's also fair when you congratulate yourself on 12.8, that it needs to be against the potential of Nairobi City. You know, that then gives a better picture. But I just wanted to make brief responses, because really this was not a substantive conversation, but it's also important that when a governor comes to the Senate, we can find areas, and you can tell us how you want us to help you. Because ultimately, the 1.2 million you're collecting per hour sounds like a lot of money to some people. But for those of us who have looked at it holistically, it might not be sufficient to transform Nairobi. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Very good questions. Thank you, Senator Sifuna, Senator Cherargei, my immediate former good friend, but I really wish you can come back, and Senator Chairman.
Your immediate former friend.
Chair, the first question, the first point you've raised is institutionalization of the relationship. Nairobi City County as a council used to actually lend money to even the national entities, in the 60s and 70s. In fact, if you look at the history of the biggest infrastructural development of water systems, from 1904, Kikuyu Springs, 1928, Ruiru Dam, 1956, Sasumwa, and then to 94 to 97, Dakaine, which is 84% of our water, they were fully done by Nairobi City Council, and that potential is there when there had been order. A lot of that got lost over time, which is what we're trying to restore. Section 6 of that Urban Areas and Cities Act then provides for you what we call an intergovernmental agreement of financing the capital, which is very different from the mistake of 187 of transfer of functions, which we would never do, we as Nairobi County. Because even those that were transferred were not performed efficiently. There's a huge pending outstanding liability of around 16 billion. That needs to be sorted out, and I'm glad we agreed with the Auditor General that all of those remain at the Executive Office of the President to solve, because it was a national intervention. The Nairobians would possibly not have prioritized some of those things that they did and failed to pay, And so we want to work on that agreement, and we're currently doing, in terms of certain things. And I'll give you an example. Street lighting is a function of the county government. Security is a national function. If the county government cannot have the lights lit, security is affected. Why is Nairobi power bill, the bills that we have, has a component of rural electrification? Yet we are performing a function that is really concurrent. And so there had been a special tariff set for lighting of the urban areas. I remember that had been negotiated. That will form part of this agreement. That yes, we will light all the streets in the city, but we will not pay as if we are selling electricity. It is not commercial, it is for security. And we want to do that. In fact, we are in talks to do another 100,000 street lights in the city. Currently we have 68,000. That agreement will look at infrastructure that is shared. For instance, and here I will come to you again for support. We have seen...
Maybe before you go there, so that intergovernmental agreement, does one exist?
No. That is we are currently working on. I gave an example of this past Monday with the Cabinet Secretary of Davis Chichir on how then they can finance that 4 billion that we want to do it expedited, because this December we want people to come back from Christmas to new roads. We want to like what we did outside here, just outside Bunge. You've seen the walkway in the garden. That was Nairobi County government. But we can replicate it all the way downtown. 1.3 billion is what is required for lower CBD, 759 for upper CBD. We've costed all of those, but we want that framework so that the national government can be allowed to chip in and for the county to chip in.
So there's never been any financing under that framework from the commencement of county governments?
Not a formal one.
So Nairobi has only relied on equitable share and on-source revenue.
And if you look at that 20 billion of on-source, vis-a-vis a wage bill of 18 billion.
18 billion is your wage bill.
You
expect 22 billion from...
Not 22, 20.
20. So what comes from the consolidated fund will go to servicing salaries.
Only pay salaries. Everything you do in Nairobi, every road, every school, every child fed.
What's the amount you remain with for development? After doing your wages, after doing your assembly, after doing your operations, and how much goes into development?
It's less than 10 billion. I'll ask my CFO to look at it, and I'll give you the specific number.
It's definitely much lower than 10 billion. It's probably 5 billion. It's probably 5 billion, because equitable share all gets swallowed by salaries, and then you have 12 billion on source revenue.
Then you have operations and maintenance.
So the assembly takes probably 2 billion. And then operations and maintenance another 2-3 billion. You are remaining for development. You're remaining with the same amount of money available to Mandera for development. To develop a city.
And that is a problem, that we need to address, because Nairobi is all of us. I mean, all of us are in Nairobi even now, you know. And so that is something I want to come with a paper to the Senate and say, look, this is what the potential, by the way, I know you've asked your team. I don't even think the answer could be close to what the revenue potential of Nairobi is. And that is why I wanted to go to the specific streams, for you just to see a snapshot of what that potential could be.
Governor, you know where you will get stuck with that proposal. Because, again, you are preaching to the choir.
Yes.
From our perspective, even if you brought that paper tomorrow, I can assure you that the Senate will support you. But then you have other people who you have to talk to. And that is the question I was asking you. I mean, all these good things that you come and tell us here, do you also say them in those other spaces? And what is the sort of reaction?
I'm coming to your question. I was answering Senator the chair's question first on institutionalization. I'm coming to yours as well. So Chair,
Senator Dulo, you had an intervention?
Chair, I hope I'm not interfering with the...
No problem, Senator.
Yeah, I just wanted to know whether you have actually structured the infrastructures that you really feel that you should co-fund with the national government, because that is really very important. Thank you.
Yeah, which I think it's a valid question, because that 4 billion, what's the basis of the 4 billion?
Yeah.
And how do you cost it and say that this is what you need from the national government? And that's why it's important to institutionalize it.
Just very quickly on that one, we've actually tabulated, including specific interventions. If you look at upper CBD, 757 million, lower CBD, 1.3 billion, Ngara in that area, 89. And so I have the entire list, you know.
Is it on roads? It's on what?
So that is, you have roads, you have certain bridges, you have the aspect of lighting, some of the areas.
BRT? Or BRT Namata?
Is a different discussion.
Which is
even at
under what? Namata?
Yeah. And at Namata, I'm the vice chair of the council. Namata was established by legal notice, looks at the metropolitan counties. The chair is the cabinet secretary for roads. The vice chair is the governor of Nairobi. One thing I'm happy about, because there are 5 lines of BRT, which really will sort out our transit problem. There's no other solution as we speak. I'll give an example of line 3. Line 3 of
sorry,
BRT.
how much is available to Namata as in terms of budget?
So each line is funded. Namata in itself only has support for the Thika Road line, which is $1 billion annually for I think 2 or 3 years. I'll get the specifics. But you look at line 3, 74 million euros being funded by the European Investment Bank. For like 2 years was stuck because of a cabinet memo. And I'm glad that our discussions with our friends has been able to unlock that. And it is scheduled for this cabinet that is coming. If you unlock that, then line 3, which is like a big line, Juja Road, Juja Road from Dandora where the station is to be put up, coming down to the CBD, up until Kenyatta, and eventually to Rongai, which is the heaviest trunk. If you look at the per person per hour load on that road, that eases a lot of this. There's work going on down here on the railway city, which would be one of the headquarters of mass transit. So a lot of the lines, we've just gotten funding now for Jogoo Road line from the Africa Development Bank. It was the only line that was not funded. So that one has gotten support for the Jogoo Road line to come. We have the Outer Ring Road line, which is being done. The first one that Kenyans will be able to see will be the Thika Road line.
So this is not coming from your equitable share on source revenue?
No, that is not from us.
So those are the additional financing arrangements that Nairobi has?
Yes. So that is an additional financing arrangement to the intergovernmental setup called Namata.
Governor, just for our benefit, like that one on Thika Road, what is the scope of works? Because all we have seen built are things that look like bus stops. And I don't even remember the last time I saw any work, any activity going on there. Because a BRT cannot be money to paint a red line on one of our lanes.
What we used to call
What is the scope of works for that line on Thika Road?
And so I would actually invite that we bring them to do a presentation. When I got in office, I asked the same. I said, BRT is not what the red lipstick in the middle of the road. And I was like, why would you put it in the middle? And these engineers took me through it. I went there at that time with the CS Kipchumba Murkomen. A lot of work has been done on the depot at Kasarani. So at Kasarani, there's a station And that station is where all of the matatus coming from, Thika Road side, from Kasarani, Ngomongo area, all of that, then drop people who then get into the buses. A lot of the mechanics for the diesel engines were done. There is now work towards trying to do more electric. Those lines will be completely unavailable for private vehicles. And then what you see on the roads become the station. Now that was stalled because of the lack of financing, because that's a national government line. And this is really what we're pushing. So as you've said, institutionalizing and making sure that then Namata does its work, because some of these things you cannot do even close to an election. If I'm to veer off into a little bit of politics, you cannot do that. This is the time to do it. So I would ask, because this discussion is a very important discussion for the city. Nairobi is blessed with geography. You're in Dubai in 5 hours, you're in London in 8 hours, and then you're stuck here for 4 hours when you land. It does not make sense. We cannot leverage the geographical location we have. And so I would urge this committee to invite ourselves and Namata on the issue, or maybe the Roads and Transport Committee, on how we unlock those projects. But I'm happy that our interaction has been able to get us funding, even as a city. But that is why, again, you should help cities to be able to get funding directly. I've been able to secure $100 million for the next water connections for the city. But it is stuck in treasury. That is Northern Collector 2 and Maragua 4, toward 220 million liters. It's been stuck there for more than a year because it's not their priority. But if counties had the leeway to be able to conclude such financing agreements based on their work, their balance sheets, we'd have seen a lot of progress. I'm glad we were not getting the 140 million extra, which is concluded from Northern Collector 1. Remember, Nairobi receives 525 million liters daily. We need 900. So we just bridged the deficit a bit by 140 million. Areas like Karen, like Reruta, Ngando, which had never been getting water. I know we'll commission soon the pipes at Embakasi Garrison going down into Mihango and Utawala. Will change lives of many Nairobians. Those who get water twice will get thrice. But Chair, coming back to...
Make it very brief. Senator Cherargei says we are now sounding like we are doing a State of the County address.
No,
so
just answering questions.
I'll give you about 3 minutes to wind up so that we come back to the agenda.
Chair, the Senator for Nairobi, my friend Senator Sifuna, has asked a critical question on the philosophy of devolution of certain individuals in our country. I want to say that never before has a capital gotten support in terms of sitting down together, thinking through the problems. I know that the support Governor Kidero didn't get, Governor Sonko didn't get, possibly didn't ask for, but he didn't get that. But the president has created an atmosphere where we can sit down and say, look, we need to sort out the city. If you look at the investment going into the river regeneration project, which is under a commission that we jointly set up, we have representatives of Nairobi there. And recently Bishop Wanjiru went there.
Which someone was doing a comparative analysis talking about similar projects, but I think it was in London at the Thames.
Yeah.
It was headed by an engineer. Yours is headed by an evangelist.
Let me not say too much about the individual.
But baptism happens around rivers, so you...
Oh my goodness. But if you look at that plan, and it will really excite you as an Nairobian, because you have an inverted city. The rivers were hidden. If you look at the 1926 master plan of the city and 48, the settlers wanted the higher areas. And so they created what they called a buffer zone, which became the slums. That's when there's floods. It's affecting Kibra, Mukuru, Madare, Huruma, all of those. Now that is going to change. But close to 70 billion shillings has been secured by the national government to support that work, plus what Nairobi Water is going to do. So, yes, the president is in full support to the capital. I think he said it as recently as Sunday. And this framework that we're working on with the Minister for Roads, that they would then inject, in the beginning 4 billion, the total cost is 11 billion, I think is an example of that kind of support. I can only speak about that kind of support to Nairobi because I can see it. And I feel it. The number of, I think we're the only county that has had a joint cabinet meeting of my cabinet and the national government sitting across the table, the president chairing that side, the governor of Nairobi on this side, saying what do we need to do for the capital. Because you must realize, in as much as it says the capital city shall be governed like any other county, that because it's the seat of the national government, and also a diplomatic, this is the only UN headquarter in the global south, then special arrangements need to be done. So I hope I've answered Senator Sifuna in terms of the personal philosophy of the head of state when it comes to devolution in Nairobi County.
Senator Nyuka?
Governor, you sure you'll do those things?
Lazima iwak. We have to.
Okay, I'll check on you next
We
year.
have to do it because I'll come back to the people of Nairobi.
Well,
So
for
the
it
work
to
that you
for
have.
it to work, you need what we call means of implementation, and resources are extremely important: financial and human resource.
Yes.
Some of these things you're talking about, Nairobi River, you could be innovative and seek climate financing. You see, the definition of climate finance could include when you have to raise a bridge because there's rising water in the rivers. That qualifies for climate finance.
Yes.
And I think the team you assemble around you should not just be thinking of how to use Kanjos to collect more, but to look at some of those global funds that have been established.
I agree.
The Green Climate Fund, GCF, when we're in Baku, they're having quiet conversations. They are thinking of setting up their regional headquarters in Nairobi.
Wonderful.
The Global Center on Adaptation, during the Africa Climate Summit, they declared they're going to set up their headquarters in Nairobi. So Nairobi is not just a UN headquarter, but it could be the climate headquarter for this region.
For the world.
So those are innovative areas that you guys must think through. But please, our job is not just to fight with you over cents and coins in your revenue systems. Our job is to enable you to deliver, to put in place proper institutional framework for delivery. But if you squander the opportunity, then perhaps your 4 or 5 years will have the same report card as the one for Kananu, and as the one for Mutura, and as the one for Sonko, and as the one for Kidero.
Chair, I share in your skepticism, and I'm sure the governor knows me well to be a proper cynic. We don't like stories in Nairobi as well. We just want to see output. So you are saying the philosophy is positive from those heading the executive. I would expect that if that was the case, there are 100 million shillings million US dollars that is stuck in Nairobi in the treasury for the water project. He should be able to unlock it as head of state. The BRT at Thika Road, why is it stuck? Nothing is happening. The compensation for the people who are evicted for the Nairobi River, you're talking about billions of shillings. They were promised only, I think it was 10,000 shillings each. They have not seen that money. So in terms of output, Governor, which one of those things are you confident that you can deliver for the people of Nairobi before we go into the elections? Which one are you sure 100% that we will get to do? Can you at least promise us that that boulevard you are promising us along the river will be done before we go into the next elections? Because my job will be to remind you.
And I know you're good at reminding me.
Thank you.
Maybe
in
Senator
addition,
Cherargei, so that the governor responds and we move on.
While the governor has a good vision, also it is important that apart from river regeneration, the issue of infrastructure, there was a small matter of Wakulima market that he went ahead and gave problems to my friend then. So what are you doing about it? Because we saw a number of traders didn't want to be relocated to some Kangundo or somewhere. They wanted to be within CBD. And you know, and they are now back on the road. And Senator Sifuna would want to have fresh mboga for his ugali when he's having ugali within the CBD, because we don't want him to be traveling far outside the CBD. What are you doing about it?
Senator Dulo?
Chair, just a general comment to Senator Governor Sakaja. There was a proposal, you remember in the last Senate, that I don't know whether it was the current ML or Senator Gitura, proposing that Nairobi County status should be removed. Now that you have a feel of Nairobi County, do you think it's worth moving that direction, or you still feel that Nairobi should remain a county? Thank you.
Chair, devolution is the greatest gift given to this country by the 2010 Constitution. 10% of our population is in Nairobi. It would be really wrong to deny them that gift. Many people have felt that when things are under the national government, they work better. I think the experiment that happened a few years ago shows the contrary. A question was asked on how much, Cherargei asked how much revenue NMS raised. The first year they did 8.9, then 10.5. Immediately we surpassed that. Despite them having the military, the guns, even the bombs, we were able to raise more without fighting the people, without even introducing a new revenue raising measure in this past financial year, but in digitizing fully. All our revenue streams are digitized and making sure there's compliance and convenience. You know, somebody wants to pay for their single business, unified business permit from their shop in Kayore and print it for themselves and have an e-verification. And that is why we've been able to raise the highest amount and to have one license. You know, before they used to be 5, 6 licenses. You're told first, come back to the county, you're told to go to 14th floor for advertising. You're told, now it is one license, you know, at our revamped customer service center, which you should visit, because the County Government Act asks all counties to have a customer service, a place where the first ones to set that up. So the notion, the idea that has always been there, which is an anti-devolution, sloganeering to paint counties as inefficient, is a lie. Assuming that there are angels in national government and demons in the counties is wrong. And they say give a dog a bad name and then you kill it. If you look at the efficiencies created by devolution, that lady in Mutuini, who knows that she can actually get, her representative there to sort out her medical issues. If you go to Udhiru Rudhimitu today in Nairobi, they have their first tarmac done by the county government. If you go to Njadaini in Zimmerman, they have never seen a project. They are seeing it now. Ruai, which is an eighth of the county, Ruai ward, it's probably, I think, a sixth to an eighth. It's the biggest ward. Today, the first tarmac being done, 147 million shillings worth, is being done by the county government of Nairobi. And so what happens in countries that have that dilemma is they move from their bustling economic capital to another part of the country and create a seat of national government. In Australia, they moved from Sydney and they went to Canberra and they formed the capital city. In the US, they moved that time either from New York or New Philadelphia to the District of Columbia, Washington, which has no senator. It just has a mayor, it has no governor, because it's the seat of the national government. Land was provided by Delaware and Virginia and the rest. If you go to Nigeria, they moved from Lagos and created Abuja as a seat of national government. And so if there's that idea, I think Isiolo would be good, Senator Dulo, because you're in the center of the country, geographical center. That is where the national government should move to. But Nairobians, born and raised here in this city, and those who've come, who we embrace, deserve devolution. Chair, the next question by Senator, by yourself. Thank you so much. That is the kind of thinking that I'm at. There is a lot that we can get from climate adaptation. The world has realized that the potential of Africa to sort out climate issues is real. In 1950, Europe's population was 22% of the world. Africa was 7%. Today, as we move to 2050, Europe is 7% and Africa has 25%, meaning 1 out of 4 people are going to be here and 65% will be in cities. And so by 2050, Nairobi will have 10.5 million people. If we don't do climate adaptation, and I'm with you because I know you chair the caucus on climate in Parliament, if I'm not wrong. I'm also the vice chair of C40 cities globally. I deputize the mayor of London. And through that, we've been able to now get support. For instance, solarization of our markets is being done by C40 cities. We're looking at how we can actually get carbon credits for some of our resources in Nairobi, including City Park, which is another issue where at that time of NMS, they created a fake title deed and moved City Park to the national government. Yet we hold the original title. City Park belongs to the people of Nairobi. KFS is there illegally. And these are things that we need, us to interact with the Senate. Right now it's before the Intergovernmental Technical Relations Committee to revert that back to the county. The same way we got back Uhuru Park, and we expect to get back Central Park when their contractor is finished this coming month. And so it is that innovative financing. I've had discussions with colleagues on the continent. The mayor of Cape Town, for instance, Jordan Hill-Lewis, did one of the most successful municipal bonds. We have the template to do it. We did an analysis of a green bond by FSD Africa, that what Nairobi can get. If you just remove that limitation in PFM regulations that pegs it on a percentage of on-source revenue, it cannot be a percentage of that. It must be how much in 10 years you'll get for sure, front-loading it, so that you can do that heavy infrastructural work, Chair. I think the final one was from Senator Cherargei about Wakulima market. And I'm sorry for whoever your friend you're referring to, I don't know, who ran into some headwinds. Chair, one of the things we said we will do is create order in this city, because the city needs order. We're building 20 markets. The markets that have excess people will have to work within their limits. It is true at that point, the political atmosphere had been muddied because we had agreed with the market traders. Someone was saying they introduced me to these people. The chairman of Wakulima Market is called Tony. He was my youth leader in TNA when I was the chairman. Yeah, we know these people. We speak to them. They want those efficiencies. Remember, less than 2 years ago, 52 women were killed in Londiani because of selling on the road. They were killed. Do we wait for an accident in Nairobi for us to relocate them? Yet we've completed a market somewhere for wholesale. So we had agreed, and we will continue with that plan. And it is not to move the market. It was really expressed badly by, friends of Cherargei, as is claimed. We're not moving any market. The capacity of Wakulima was 97 trucks for wholesale. The 90th truck will go to Kangundo Road. The capacity of the traders was around, and today you'll find 300 trucks. The capacity for traders was less than 1,000. The 1,000 and fast will go to Kangundo Road. We're building another market. We're redoing Toy Market. Mutuini Market right now, if you go, is moving very fast. And it is right on a bypass.
Yeah. Governor, just on that line, even as we sit here today, the traders who are trading outside Wakulima Market on the streets, they are there now. I've seen it with my own eyes today.
Yeah, and we'll
so what was the fuss all about? I mean, because the impression you gave us is that you had agreements with the traders to move to Kangundo Road. Why are they still there?
It's not the same traders. It's hawkers.
So, then what is the point of moving one person only to be replaced by another?
You have to keep doing it. On theory, Senator, it's good to say we've moved them. Every single day is an enforcement day. Every single day.
So high work.
It must work.
Yeah, it is not
That's
working.
my work. It must.
But it's not working yet.
It's not
It is
working
working.
yet.
It is working to a great extent, and I will show you.
So maybe,
Look at the level of
honorable senators.
How many have you relocated from Wakulima Market to Kangundo? So that, as you say, the people who are selling outside are hawkers.
They are hawkers.
How many have you relocated? And it's good you know the chair of Toy and the Wakulima Market, Tony.
I think it would be beneficial for the actual committee to look into those details.
Which actual committee?
You have a committee on trade, don't you?
Governor, you have been very generous with information on other matters. When it comes to this, you think it should be handled by another committee? I don't think that's being fair.
No, because and I'll give you the information. My apologies.
With the truth,
my apologies, Chair. If you look at the turnover of different people who, and they're aching out a living. Chair, in the last 2 years, there have not been running battles in this city, as used to be. You remember, you'd hear stories of hawkers being stabbed with pliers, fighting with the city. You've not had it in 2 years. You've not had a strike of matatus in 2 years because of our continuous engagement with them. And so at times, even if it might, sometimes, have a week of calm and they come back, there's a way we engage them pragmatically and then move them in a humane way. If we took the option of now putting armed police there and start beating up people, it will not work. So, yes, there could be days when traders show up, we engage them. You'll find 2 days where it is clean. Eventually, it has to settle. More markets. Right now, the discussion with them is about Mwariro. Yeah? And they've come to us as recently as last week through my CEC. That's why I'm saying a committee would go deeper into it because we're discussing the audit. Through my CEC just allow me to finish.
Yeah.
Through the CEC of markets, asking that yes, if you can give us space outside the market, the parking area at Mwariro, then we'd be happy to move from there. We want them then, okay, we agree, maybe for some of you, Kangundo is too far, come to Mwariro. It is a continuous engagement. It is not black and white, start and stop. Theoretically it is, but practically, when you're actually in there, it doesn't work.
We started off very well. It's like a visit to the doctors, and you need to be very clear about your symptoms so that we know what you're suffering from and prescribe the proper medicine. But now if you start to confuse us on the actual state of affairs in some of these areas, we don't know how to help. Are you sure that none of the people who was relocated from Wakulima is back there? You are saying those are new people.
I can say that very confidently. I can say that quite confidently. Yeah. Because you see, even the vehicles have registration numbers.
It's not the vehicles. The overriding, and I even supported you on that. We don't want what happened in Londiani to happen at Wakulima. They're on the road even if we left this room and went there with you now. But you cannot say they are new people. I know some of those traders.
Then convince them to go. If you know, to help us. Let's work together.
On the day I sit there, Governor, I will have the persuasive powers to move them. But you cannot ascribe.
I wish you well.
You cannot ascribe work that has been assigned to you constitutionally to your senator.
Let me bring this session to a close so that we move to the next one.
Yeah.
But it is our view that just by looking at financial statements is not sufficient oversight over Nairobi.
Yes.
And just as the way we are saying, we need to have different arrangements for cities in everything.
Even in
you know, we cannot take the approach I take for oversight of Homa Bay cannot be the same approach I take for Nairobi. And so that's why all these comments coming from senators, they are extremely valid and they are within the mandate of this committee. And members, I think Nairobi being just a stone throw away, in the next session, we probably need to be more on the ground.
Wonderful.
Because instead of talking about Wakulima in a boardroom, all we need to do is to go there. Instead of talking about the rivers, all we need is to go there.
Chair, I have a personal frustration in this committee where I feel that Nairobi doesn't appear as often as other governors. I've seen some governors here more than enough times. And the reason why all these issues build up is because I don't feel like we have enough sessions with Nairobi. So even from your chair, I think you need to give us more time with the Nairobi County government. And lastly, just because he has brought up markets, there was an issue, Governor, we raised with you about Kawa West Market, where your people allowed stalls to be built outside the gate of the market. And you had given us an assurance that those stalls will be removed. Have those stalls been removed?
No. And they won't be removed, Senator. What we found when we looked into it, there have been extensive public participation with the people of the market. And there's new construction going on. What they've agreed to do is to do differentiation of what is sold at the stalls, so that you don't have the same product in the market being sold outside the store. And I'll be very happy to furnish you with the public participation report there. I understand, I know you went there, I know the issues I know the chair of that market and the MCA and whatnot, but they'd actually done that participation, because I looked into it. I really, just like every other ward, it's a ward very close to my heart, and I've looked into it. Pragmatically, we don't have enough trading spaces for all our people. Even with the new construction, which is going on right now, if you go to see, that even won't be enough. So long as there's differentiation, because you don't want people selling outside the market what is inside the market. No one will go inside the market, and so you'll kill your own market where you're putting money to. So work with me to make sure that we do that differentiation properly. So
I'll be happy to see the report. If you are telling me that the traders inside agreed to that, I'll be happy to see that report.
Okay. Well, we'll share that.
Yeah, I think Nairobi is a complex organization. You are thinking about hawkers, you're thinking about markets, you're thinking about green bonds, you're thinking about BRT, Namata, water. So you went for the job, you left us here in Parliament. We will put you under pressure to perform.
I work best like that. And Chair, I think the Senator of Nairobi is correct, and yourself. A lot of the things, you've asked which of these projects will you do, which ones can you do. When we go together to a house in Ngando that has never received water, and you open the tap, that is audit. If we go together to better than the documents, if we go out there to see what this revenue we're raising and that we've increased is doing on the ground. So I'm very happy and open to that. When you go to Pumwani and see the first ICU there, Mama Lucy, see the NICU at Mbagathi, see what is happening in Mutwini, where for the first time, people are being referred from private facilities to a public facility because of the machinery. And one of the questions, actually, Senator Sifuna, when visited us with the health committee, said there's no X-ray. And I put that CEO to task because what he had been telling you possibly was not reflective. Today, go there. It is amazing. So oversight builds institutions. And I am a believer in oversight. I've been a senator longer than I've been a governor. So Chair, I'm very open to that. I think finally, on the questions that had been,
Yeah, that's a final response. Then we go to the report.
Finally, on the questions that have been asked, 2021, which is when NMS just took over, was 10. 21-22 was 8.9. Then when we came, 10.5 billion, which was the second highest in the history of devolution in Nairobi, because the other higher one was 2015-16 when you did regularization, was 10.5, and the last one is 12.8 billion, which in the last few days we were targeting 13 billion, but the last few days, you remember, that was June, and you know what was happening towards the end of June. With a lot of the protests within the city, we had a sharp decline in our revenue collection due to the protests at that time. The potential of Nairobi is extremely high. And I'll give you an example. And I need your help as a Senate.
What's the figure for the potential?
For 67 billion. Yeah, that is according to World Bank, to the CRA. They talk about 67. I think
so this is just about 25% of that potential.
And I think it is much higher. The target we put, for instance, annually is our own target. You know, when you say we want to do 20 billion, we believe that with measures and everything held constant, we can get to 20 billion. And I'll give you an example without specifying the current transaction. It might jeopardize it. One of the regularizations we're currently doing in Nairobi, part of Eastlands, just one scheme with 20,000 settlers is going to give us 7 billion at a go in the next few days if we conclude. You know, right now they're conducting an aerial survey. People had settled in. It was privately owned. They have built buildings without approvals of the county government. We've said for each and every approved subdivision, because we have to approve the subdivision.
But that's a windfall, because you won't get it in the subsequent year.
Yeah, but that's what happened in 15-16. So that's a windfall, and that's one scheme. You know, we've not looked at, there's so many schemes. There's Kiamu Dandora, there's Embakasi Ranching, there's the whole of pipeline. And so currently, we have two options. We have the regularization bill in the County Assembly of Nairobi, but we also have PLUPA, the Physical Land Use Planning Act, on which we can do that regularization of unauthorized developments. That alone can give us extra from the 12.8 billion, another extra 20-30 billion, you know. Support we need from you. The biggest revenue stream in any city is property taxes, yeah, globally. Even in Nairobi, it's land rates. I'm happy with my team that we were able first to move to a recent valuation role. Every other part of the country is stuck in 1980s valuation role. We are at 2019 valuation role, but it's 0.015% of the value, which is okay because you don't want to shock people with 3 times or 4 times what they've been paying. Meaning, even for those who what they need to pay today is more than twice, they can only pay twice. If it's more than 100% of what you're paying, we've allowed them to pay in installments. So you can pay monthly for 10 months, leaving 2 months for enforcement action by us. But here's a challenge, Chair. 2 things. One, in our records, we have 175,000 parcels with attributes. This means it's 175,000 billable properties. And we have around 50,000 accounts on Nairobi Pay. The 50,000 accounts do not cover the 175,000 parcels. The Ministry of Lands has 255,000 parcels in their records for Nairobi with attributes. We have been working to get this data, but it's been almost elusive to get it. Because all we want is to be able to know who to bill and then who to enforce on. If we just do that fast, even with the current rate, we do that fast with the current rates, then what we get from property taxes is going to more than double, because you're talking about 50,000 accounts. Very few people have more than one parcel, you know.
Chair, just so that we help the governor. Governor, the CS of Lands has been so far very cooperative on matters that we have raised, especially affecting land grabbing in Nairobi, starting with Tomboya Social Hall and the others. So that is something we can do for you as a Senate. Bring that request through your senator. We will be able to get that information for you.
Thank you, Senator. Governor, I think we need to stop there and come back to this report, because even some of those figures have a bearing on the receiver of revenue. In fact, I was just looking at the top page of this report, where the Auditor General talks of your collection of 450 million from property rent. I think it's quite inverted. Ideally, property rent, as you said, in a city should be higher than land rates. That's what you're saying.
No, when I say property taxes, I mean land rates. Property rent is our houses. So those who are in Kanzo flats, in Eastlands, in Woodley, that is what we call it.
That's a 450 million.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just come back to the systems environment. For avoidance of doubt, and Governor, as you said that the ongoing audit, you are afraid that the past transgressions might discolor your current report. We must make it clear that if there are transgressions in the past, the persons responsible must also be held to account. There is need to look at the current situation, but that does not mean running away from responsibility on the past issues. Whoever was a receiver of revenue, whoever was in charge of revenue during those past periods, if there are unresolved matters, the position of the committee is that they also must be held to account. So can we do a quick review of the systems environment, and we'll go to your report. I think it didn't have a header, it didn't have a date, it didn't have a signature. And so, Governor, when you said they were waiting for your signature, I wonder where that signature was amended.
The signature is on the cover, as is on the cover letter.
So
these are annexures.
So let's go to the supplementary questions that the Senate had asked. With regards to governance structures for revenue management in the county, the first question was, what is the organization structure for the Revenue Board? Governor, what's your response?
Thank you, Chair. The Nairobi City County Assembly enacted the Nairobi City County Revenue Administration Act of 2021. This establishes a legal and institutional framework and establishes what we call the NRA, the Nairobi City County Revenue Authority. Chair, this act had not been implemented from 2021. When I became the governor of Nairobi, I moved quickly to implement this act by setting up the Revenue Authority, which is headquartered at CBK Pension Towers. We have a fully fledged board chaired by one Andrew Chege, who is an expert in taxation, has worked at KRA for a long time. He is part of those who innovated iTax and other innovations on technology. It has a full board which represents different parts of society, including residents, including business community. The vice chair is in the Chamber of Commerce. So we have the organizational structure that I have attached. We have the interim CEO, Dr. Ntoiti, who is here with us. He's the interim CEO of the Nairobi Revenue Authority. He's been the CEO of Meru Revenue Authority. But before that, he was a player we loaned to Meru. He used to be in Nairobi. But because he comes from there and the governor then wanted homegrown talent, he was on loan for a few years and came back. But he's a great expert in revenue.
Why is he still interim?
He was interim there in Meru.
No, he introduced himself as interim.
He's Director of Revenue in Nairobi County Government, but interim CEO at the Revenue Authority. The board is undertaking recruitment for substantive CEO. And so we've seconded him to the authority, while just to help them, get the administration moving. But the board, according to the Revenue Act, the Revenue Administration Act, are the ones to recruit. Currently, there's a tender. If you look at the public procurement portal, tender 148, on request for proposal of recruitment consultancy services for position of Chief Executive Officer, Revenue Administration for Nairobi Revenue Authority. That one is currently on the portal. We can share the reference for that, Chair.
So that's still live?
It is live as we speak.
Okay, we proceed then to the number of employees deployed in revenue collection.
So currently there's 1,298 staff who are deployed for revenue collection. The staff, the list of all of them, their IPPD numbers and their workstations are attached. Chair, there are different departments there. We have those who do revenue from building plans. We have those who do sundry debtors. There are those who do rental and markets. These are the markets which are on the TPS scheme, tenant purchase scheme. We have public health revenue, which is quite substantive. Advertisement revenue, building materials unit, city funeral homes. We have now revenue officers in all our hospitals and proper, finance structure. You remember there had been an issue in auditing of level 5, level 4 hospitals, which are led now by CEOs, which was also an intervention we brought in. We have the DCU, which is the enforcement unit. We have rates, and part of what we want to do in enhancing revenue is actually making rates a fully fledged department, property tax, as is the case. We've benchmarked cities across the world. You have it fully fledged, you have what we call tax bargaining, so that you can actually establish the correct value of taxation to be paid. So, Chair, that is the structure.
How does automation affect the numbers? Do you expect that with great automation, the numbers will reduce? Just this morning, I was driving through the city, and I saw parking revenue officers, and there are quite many wearing those jackets, saying corruption is evil.
It is evil.
I thought you should say it is illegal, because not everyone believes in your faith.
No, but there are very few legal.
Evil is a matter of faith. So should we expect the numbers to reduce as a result of automation? Because this is a huge army.
It is a huge army. Remember, this is a city of 5 million people. There's only 1,200. Even with automation, a system is as good as what you feed it. And so you need people querying physically, querying the payments done. And sometimes I'm sure you see some of the mistakes done when you get an SMS saying you parked in town and your vehicle has been in the garage. And normally that's a human error. They'll put your vehicle KAD and mess one number. And so we keep trying to improve that, either through taking a photo of the number plate instead of keying in the numbers. Some people have these fancy plates where, the B looks like an E, and we are working with NTSA to make sure let it be standard so that we can be able to capture it properly. So,
Governor, do these people have the right job title? If we have an automated revenue collection system, that work that you're describing is not revenue collection, is it?
In terms of?
And that is why the chair was saying, because we have gone through the discussion about our wage bill, where our entire equitable share is consumed by wage bill. So how can automation not result in a reduction of the wage bill? And that job that you're describing, really, is that a proper name for the work that these people do?
The job of parking attendants?
No, you're calling them revenue collectors. Staff deployed for revenue collection.
Chair, some of these terms are statutory terms. PFM 158 determines that there must be revenue collectors. Yeah, so that is under PFM. But the specific designation of which revenue they collect then depends on the revenue stream. But the PFM stipulates that we must actually have them as revenue collectors who report.
So back to the question that the chair raised. How can automation not have any impact on our wage bill?
It has an impact, but you see what you do is that you then redeploy, because you will not fire PNP people because you've gotten a revenue solution. You actually retrain them and use them until their time goes. What you reduce is new employment. People have worked in City Hall for years, they're about to retire or they're in their 40s. Because of technology, let's not have the situation in the tea farms. Senator Tererge will remind you of a visit we did when I was chair of Labour, and he was a ranking member. And we went to James Finlay. And they were saying these machines are getting us out of work. We have a big unemployment problem. And so while we might reduce the employment, we cannot fire people because of user technology. Because once that thought comes out, they will sabotage the technology that is currently being deployed. And so it is really retraining them to make the systems more efficient, Chair.
It will then be a point of convergence that these are not revenue collection officers. They no longer do that work.
They help revenue collection by verifying that you've paid the revenue. They don't receive cash. Actually, we've closed our cash office. There's no cash office in Nairobi County because everything is electronic. And we want to continue doing a campaign, which I'm sure you'll help us as a senator, to sensitize people across the city. If anyone asks you for cash, it is them you're paying, not the county government, And part of it, actually, if I may, has made us reduce some charges. I'll give you an example. There were trailers, the fee for trailers parking in Russell area was 3,000 shillings. But the bribe was 1,000. And so we said, let's make the fee 1,000. So it was reduced. We're collecting more now with a lower amount because now, if the bribe is the same as you'd rather just pay, instead of going through those. So we've actually reduced some of those rates, but widened compliance, and we're collecting more through that, Chair.
Okay, we'll then maybe when you're doing your audit also, maybe look at how these numbers have been growing. Because you have 1298. Has that been the number over the years? Is it increasing? Are you recruiting more? And yet still putting more money on automation?
We can look at that. Currently, we've just shortlisted 43 revenue clerks. The 43 had been at our customer service center, which I would really invite you to come visit, at City Hall Annex on the first floor. There had been, not 43, 40. There had been casuals for a long time, young people who really helped us revamp, build this revenue, and we felt that it's good to confirm them. So that's the only recruitment, apart from the CEO and the top directors of the Revenue Authority. And then now the discussion is going on who within the current establishment of the county government then transitions to the Revenue Authority. It's a very sensitive discussion because there's some things you want to replicate, there's some things you don't want to transfer to a new institution. And so that is an ongoing discussion. Chair, I'm very alive to labor issues. You know I've been chair of labor, and I'm also chair of labor at the COG. And so you must be alive to contractual obligations that you currently have with the staff.
Yeah, and I think we also need to urge a human face to revenue collection.
Yes.
I visited a flower, these roadside operations where they sell potted plants. And the lady there expressed her frustration. There's an army of KRA people. I think that was when KRA had hired some people to move around premises to ask all sorts of funny questions. This lady tells me that the KRA people would come in the morning, the Kanjo guys would come in the afternoon.
Yeah.
There would be fees paid through the system, but there is an informal mafia going around.
Yeah.
There are fees that are collected by those persons. And that's why when you talk of the 1,298, some of them could be industrious citizens, but some of them are rent seekers, frustrating small and medium enterprises. I think the lady was telling me that she would part with 500 for KRA, another 500 for Kanjo, and she's just selling flowers. One bougainvillea, perhaps, she sells at 50 shillings. By the time she sells enough to make 1,000, it means that she has had to sell almost 50 seedlings. You can clearly see, to have 50 seedlings is a lot of money, is a lot of effort, but then it's taken away by those who purport to be collecting tax. And they are not getting any service in return anyway, because they draw water from the nearby stream. They are not even using Kanjo water to water the plants. And I think that's a conversation, that's a concern that many Nairobians doing those small businesses have. Salons, liquor shops, florists, or those roadside operations. Let's put a human face to revenue collection.
Chair, I'm in full agreement with you. Of course, on a light note, if you see KRA is taking the same amount, possibly that should be the share of revenue also. We should do 50-50. Yeah. But seriously, it is the reason why we even published in the newspapers who the inspection officers are. Before, what you'd have, and we're really moving away from it. In the morning, somebody will come to look at your single business permit. In the afternoon, someone comes from City Hall saying, I'm looking at fire. Tomorrow, somebody comes, pest control. The next day, somebody else comes on advertising. And we said that there's only going to be one inspection team. What we've now moved to, as we finish our biometric exercise, which is speaking to our wage bill, is that then we will deploy what we deployed in Nairobi Water. In Nairobi Water, we've deployed something called Jitambulishe. Well, if somebody comes to your house purporting to read the meter or to be an officer, you can actually use an USSD code, type it out, and they'll tell you if Edwin Sifuna is a meter reader or not. And you can even go further and press a link and see their photo. Because somebody can come with your ID, knowing that Peter Karande is a meter officer. So we're doing that as well. So one inspection team that has all the cadres published, you can tell that, and the numbers look many, but they're not. Remember, we have 85 wards. If you look at Kamkunji sub-county revenue officers, for instance, Isili North, there are 14 officers. You know the number of businesses in Isili, and business premises. 14 officers is not an overkill. 14 officers are sufficient because what we tell them is our approach towards revenue is not punishment but compliance. And so they come, they look at your license, and they tell you, look, this license actually is not genuine. There's an e-verify sticker, yeah, with a QR code. And then they walk you through with our compliance application how to get the proper license. And that is why today, if you look at the city court, the numbers are much less than used to be. City court used to be like remand of industrial area. Of course, it is not perfect. We're continuously improving it because you'll find one or two rotten eggs, and that's why we want to deploy a system where Nairobians can actually tell us.
That's what I wanted to go to, Governor.
Yeah.
In other jurisdictions, we have departments of internal affairs,
yes,
where members of the public can report this thing.
Yeah.
And it is sometimes the situation on ground, as they say, is totally different. The sort of friendliness that is required from those officers for you to even check their identification is sometimes not always there.
Yeah.
And it is very easy to theorize and say you can ask them, like the way they tell Kenyans, you can ask a police officer to show you his identification or force number. But for ground, by the time you are checking, you are in the back of that.
Mariam.
Yes, you said you cleared all the old ones. Now we have new prison buses.
Mm. You know, Chair, the Nairobian of today is defiant in a positive way. They don't take. I love how you see Nairobians recording people doing the wrong thing. And you see, as we develop this, I would want Nairobians to be able to show us that officer. There are many masquerading as our county officers, and that's why I want my officers to be fully, recognizable and identifiable, so that if you have a record on video, there's something I'm working on in our finance bill, in our finance act, which turns all Nairobians into inspectors. So any Nairobian can actually record an intervention of the law and help us even verify. If you find this one is fake and you report it, split the fine with them. That if you're to pay 10,000 for the license and the fine is 5,000, take 2,500 and give us 2,500. It's something we're working on. Because compliance is for the benefit of all of us. If people are jumping traffic lights, the inconvenience is not to the governor. It is to you in traffic. You should be able to also record and help us snap that person. So, culture change, organizational change in terms of values is a process. It doesn't happen in a day or in a year. But many will tell you that the officers have become a bit friendlier. And those rogue ones, I want to know them because they're giving us a bad face. They don't look like what we want to give Nairobians. Our second principle is dignity. Chair.
Yeah, I think as Senator Sifuna says, on the ground things are different. So those were the governance arrangements. We have seen the appointment letters for the receiver of revenue and the list of the revenue collectors. The second supplementary question was on the information systems used in revenue collection. Now, you listed in the responses before us live forms, which you have indicated is no longer in use. You listed the second system after live forms was Jumbo Pay. Is Jumbo Pay still in use?
No.
The third system you listed was Revenue Sure. Is Revenue Sure still in use?
No.
And then the fourth system you listed was Nairobi Pay system. Is Nairobi Pay system in use?
Yes.
So that's the current system that is utilized.
Yep.
Is it only one or there are other systems beyond the Nairobi Pay system?
The system in use today is Nairobi Pay. Nairobi Pay system has different modules.
So, honorable members, because the Auditor General will be employing the services of a systems auditor.
Yes.
And one of the substantive issues that was raised in the audit report was that multiplicity of systems and the lack of interfaces or proper migration in between the systems that the Auditor General can handle. Mark?
Yes, Chair. We have a specialized department that deals with the information systems audit. Thank you, Chair.
So if that is the case, could we focus, just go through the system currently in use, so that the Auditor General can then interrogate the other aspects of data migration, other aspects of integrity of systems, other aspects of integrity of data in those systems, so that we deal with the system that is currently in use in Nairobi. If that is a consensus, then let's look at your responses on Nairobi Pay system. Who is the developer of this system? Governor?
Thank you. The responses are as I've given. The developer of the system, or rather the system vendor, is the national government through the Ministry of ICT and Digital Economy.
Under what framework was this done? Because we know that the National Treasury has been struggling to come up with an integrated county revenue management system. And so why would the National Treasury be pursuing that? And yet the Ministry of ICT has already developed something that is in use in Nairobi.
Chair, I will not be able to answer for the Treasury, but what I can do is give you the background of this system. Chair, you remember in 2019-2020, Nairobi County Government, then through its CEC of Finance, appointed KRA as an agent to collect revenue for them. KRA, of course, took it up with much alacrity. However, they realized they have no system because they could not deploy ITAX or the systems that they have. And so they engaged the national government through a multi-agency team, of course spearheaded by ICTA and the Ministry of ICT, to develop a system. They had what they called JNAM, the Joint National Mapping. They did a lot of GIS work. They did work on Lands Ministry. They did RD SASA. They did many of those components, including a revenue system for Nairobi. Chair, when we got into office, we found a system operating with the developers. And unlike what happens in many cases, I'm sure you've seen cases where every governor comes and sets up their own system, or they look for a vendor, a private sector vendor who can, provide a system for whichever reasons. Chair, we said, if it's not broken, don't fix it, let's make it better. And so we adopted the system, but we said, number one, the capacity must be within the county government. We must host this system, and we must be able to give full instructions that we no longer have an agent collecting on our behalf. We are collecting it with our staff. For transition and for ease of, because revenue is two things, Chair. Revenue collection is systems and operations. Systems include technology and devices, and gadgets, what you use to query the vehicles. It includes interconnections between NTSA to tell us the number plate, KRA to tell us the PIN, all of that. That is the system work. Operations are the cadences you set, that every morning at this time, officers will go to this road, query vehicles, land people will go to this estate, look at LR numbers, etc. And so I wrote to the Ministry of Finance directly to KRA, asking for the secondment of 9 officers who had been process champions in the revenue streams to come and shepherd that transition back into the city. If you did a hard stop completely, we'd have lost a lot of time and money. And that is what possibly allowed us to continue growing our revenues. So what we're currently doing, Chair, because it is the architecture of the system is software as a service. I'm the one actually who came up with the name Nairobi Pay and Nairobi Plan. It was more or less nameless. I think they call it Taifa Pay at some point. There was no brand. And when you're selling a solution to the public, you need to brand it. The user interface must be easy. If you dial now *647# on your phone, you should be able to see step by step, create an account, put your ID, what do you want to pay, is it land rate, is it parking, etc. So the user interface, for the friendliness of it, we call it Nairobi Pay. So that is
what was the effective date for this system?
Effective date in terms of?
When did you start using it? Like when did you migrate to it?
That must have been 2020 actually. Let my chief officer revenue just check.
Yeah, and Governor,
fortunately, he was also chief officer Smart Nairobi, so he's
Yeah.
also in the ICT space.
Chair, the question you're asking is best answered by a document, Governor. There has to be a document that speaks to the framework.
There's a document, Appendix 2, 4C.
What is that document?
It's a memorandum of agreement between the city county government, NMS, and KRA into the integrated management system for Nairobi.
The one that was signed by Anne Kananu on 15th November 2021.
Yes. And beyond that, there's that's the document. And the different articles talk about the scope, the adoption of one system, Nairobi revenue system, talks about how to roll it out, data migration and reconstruction, system training for users, stakeholder engagement, dispute resolution. Signed by Her Excellency Anne Kananu Mwenda, Acting Governor at that time, Mohamed Badi, Lieutenant General, NMS, and the Commissioner General of KRA, Githim Buru.
So, Governor, the last time we were here, there were conversation about the ownership of this system. And I think your answer then was that it is fully owned by the county government.
Yes, at that time the discussions were that it's our system. We own it, that's why we're not paying anyone for it. We're not paying any commission, any development fee, because the thinking at that point was, government is government, so let's support the county of Nairobi, and that is why I answered as much as the support framework and the memorandum had been between those three entities. You realize one of the entities it does not exist anymore, which is the NMS. It is just us and KRA no longer collect for us. Part of what we've been migrating actually has been accounts which have the KRA title in terms of the collection accounts.
So, Governor, this is a very interesting agreement because it doesn't specify the duties, responsibilities, rights of any of the parties there. Why are these parties? Why was this agreement even necessary? Because it doesn't speak to any of the duties, responsibilities. Is it the whole thing? Because I can see only 3 pages.
And that's the 2021 agreement. You remember that all of us were against this. Because against this at that time, when I was in the Senate. Because of those very reasons. And which is why, if you look after that, we have what we call the technical support framework in my time. Put down on the 16th of March this year. That actually looks at the specific roles, maintenance, performance improvement, removing outdated functions, system hosting. This is more specific in terms of what the county's roles are and what the ministry's roles are. It is signed by our county secretary, our chief officer, Smart Nairobi, who is here. He's now chief officer revenue, and the ICT authority. So we want to retain
Governor, if you look at that document, there are pages that are missing, at least from my bundle. The even numbered pages are not here.
It must be a printing issue. Just
that is correct, because from page 3 of 9 we go to page 5 of 9, and then page 7 of 9.
Apologies, that must be a printing error. We
need to get this complete document, because this is extremely useful for our work.
Yes.
Why should the Treasury be talking of developing another system when the Ministry of ICT already has a system that is supporting the biggest county? in the country. And it's not for you to answer, as you had said at the beginning, but we'd really want to understand what the Ministry of ICT is offering Nairobi to guide us, whether this then ought to be the solution that could be standardized and rolled out to the other county governments.
In fact, Governor, for the few pages that are here are worrying me even more. You have been very categorical that Nairobi Pay is owned by the Nairobi County government. Mm-hmm. If you go to page 3 of that agreement, page 3 of 9, there is Article 1.3, which says, headed purpose. And it starts by saying the Nairobi Pay system is owned by the national government of Kenya.
Yes, Chair, as I explained, at the point when I gave that